Customs procedures. I made mention of various customs procedures in some of the earlier videos in this course. These provide an indication of why goods are being moved. And it's easy to imagine that for large industries, specifying reasons for your goods movements can become convoluted. However, in all cases, it is vital that procedures are accurately entered in the fields of a customs declaration. Errors may result in delays, extra charges, and the loss of reliefs. So, there are many customs procedures, but don't worry. I'm not going to cover all of them. Just a handful, and in 3 small groups. Procedures often used with imports. Procedures common to imports and exports. And procedures often used with exports. As you can see, these are not strict groups. One might argue that most customs procedures belong to the middle group only. And that might be true. But I'm using these groups merely to chop up my list of procedures into 3 smaller groups in order to simplify this video. Nothing more. But I also want to weave something else into these groups. What's that? The concept of special procedures. Okay, what are special procedures? Well, to answer that question, let me first discuss a couple of ordinary customs procedures, before introducing the concept of special procedures, and then we'll look at a few individual special procedures in a bit more detail. How's that? Okay, brill. And before I forget, a quick heads up. I'll just add that there is a different category of customs procedure related to transport. You might hear these referred to as customs transit procedures. And these are customs procedures, which I introduce separately, but later in this series on customs procedures and special procedures. So not to worry about these right now. Next. And very quickly. Before we launch into custom procedures. Some tips to help you find out more about importing goods. Fab. If you are thinking, I wish I knew more about importing goods, then I know just how you feel. But just to reassure you, there is plenty of help available. As an example, you can search for HMRC, starting to import. But in brief, and at the time of writing, the end of the Brexit transition period is in sight. And from the 1st of January 2021, when importing goods from anywhere, you need an EOI. You need your commodity code. Your goods need to be declared to customs, and you also need to work out the value of your goods in order to pay the correct duty and VAT, where applicable. Find links to these topics at https://www.gov.uk/starting-to-import/importing-from-none-countries. On top of this, you can also find Tools Club videos touching on EOI, commodity codes, and customs declarations, and plenty more besides. You might like to start with my list of contents. And you can find this at https://tools.club/contents-list/. Also, check out the Taxation and Customs Union website of the European Commission. Customs procedures for import and export. This is a simple page, which I use quite a lot. Find it at https://ec.europa.eu/taxation_customs/business/customs-procedures_en. Great. So next. Customs procedures. And procedures, often used with imports. We'll take a moment to explore some of these procedures, starting with a few that are common to imported goods. So, which procedures are commonly used with imports? Free circulation, then temporary storage, and this is followed by a brief introduction to special procedures. And after this, inward processing, and then specific use. Specific use is a heading that clumps together temporary admission and end use. Then rounding off this section with the re-export procedure. We'll examine each in turn. So, kicking off with free circulation. What is free circulation? And we're on notice. Notice 275, Customs Export Procedures. We have visited this notice in previous videos. And we're here this time for the glossary. Section 21. And scrolling down. A bit more. Ah yes. Free circulation. Goods imported into the community, or EU customs territory, are in free circulation in the customs union, if and when all import formalities have been completed. So, all duties, levies, charges, should all have been paid, and not refunded. On top of this, we see goods that actually originate from within the community are automatically in free circulation. And that's nice. But we can also get more information. Let's jump to the Taxation and Customs Union section of the EU website. And free circulation. The four freedoms of the European Union, in brief, are the free movement of goods, services, capital, and labor, and all throughout the member states. These freedoms were enshrined in the 1957 Treaty of Rome, but also reinforced in the Single European Act 1986, in the 1992 Maastricht Treaty, and again, in the Lisbon Treaty of 2007. So, this link takes us to the latest of those treaties. Scrolling down a bit. Yes. The Lisbon Treaty, signed on the 13th of December, 2007. Scroll down a bit and we see the table of contents. Preamble, principles. Yes, here. Free movement of goods. If you want to further research free circulation, you might start right here, find Article 28. We introduce free circulation and union status of goods next. So, back. And when traders specify the free circulation procedure in declarations used for importing third country goods into the EU customs territory, aka the European single market, they are informing customs that they wish to confer union status on their goods, and so be able to freely move their goods through the customs territory of the EU. And we see, when it comes to the import of third country foreign imports, the purpose of the release for free circulation is to fulfill all import formalities so that the goods can be sold on the union market, like any product made in the EU. Release for free circulation thus confers on non-union goods the status of union goods. So, to enter your third country goods into free circulation, also known as conferring union status on your imports, you need to pay any charges where applicable. You will need to conform to any measures applicable for your goods. And we pointed to import and export measures in part 1 of this course. Included in this, you will need the correct paperwork, licenses, certificates, etc. But you might also have access to quotas. And we discussed quotas in part 1 of this course too. We discuss controlled goods, licenses, hand in hand with different types of taxes, in later videos. We'll also see where you might specify free circulation on a customs declaration form later. In previous videos, we discussed how the date is used to calculate any charges. Do union goods keep their status forever? No. For example, union goods may lose their status if they leave the EU, unless you also use a transit procedure. We also take a peek at transit procedures in a later video. So what will happen to the definition of free circulation after the Brexit transition period expires? There will be no change in the definition of free circulation for the EU. Other than, it will apply only to the remaining member states and participating countries of the European Customs Union. And like any other country, situated outside of the customs territory of the EU, the UK will become a third country if no related terms are agreed upon after the Brexit transition period. As such, the UK will face charges and measures when placing goods into free circulation within the EU customs territory, just like any other third country. Furthermore, with regard to moving goods from EU countries to the UK, I'll paste in the URL for the HMRC page. Starting to import. And we see that from the 1st of January 2021, you will need to follow the rules for the rest of the world when importing goods from the EU. Prior to that, you only need to pay any VAT due. Drilling down into paying VAT for EU acquisitions, we see, if you move goods from an EU country, you must add these acquisitions and any tax due to your VAT return. But you can reclaim the VAT paid if the goods are for you to make VATable supplies, or in some cases, for use in your business. And we'll touch on VAT again in future videos where we discuss different types of taxes. So, let's do a before and after transition period example for free circulation. Scroll down to the bottom where we see, if a French company imports bicycles from China and pays the duty on them prior to the 1st of January 2021, they are in free circulation, and you can buy and move them to the UK without paying further duties. Any VAT will still be due, but you can reclaim the VAT if your business is going to sell these bicycles. However, from the 1st of January 2021, for the same example, in the absence of any related terms in trade agreements between the UK and the EU, although the situation with regard to VAT remains unchanged, the situation with regard to duties has changed. You now need to pay duties on your goods. Your goods will be subject to any applicable measures, restrictions, reliefs, etc. So, all this must be key points to bear in mind when exploring UK and EU customs procedures. Speaking of which, temporary storage. Next,